Right. I'll speak on Trishanku today because the Trishanku story is not only something very interesting. I was quite surprised when people asked me who is Trishanku. Because in my childhood it was a very common phrase. I am in Trishanku Swargam. I feel like I am neither here nor there. I am in the heaven of Trishanku, and people actually didn't know. So I said, how come people don't know this? This is quite strange. And since Trishanku is also one of the cards in my Sacred India Tarot, I said, good, we can get a talk on that also out. And then when I thought a bit more about it, I realized there is something very, very significant and interesting for us in the Trishanku story, those of us who are doing the 8 spiritual breaths and the integral yoga. So I said, chalo, this is obviously some kind of guidance, that people are asking me who it is. I, of course, um, scolded them a bit, saying, I am not some kind of default Google. Please go and check first. then, then ask me. So one person said, "Acha, okay, Roogle," like. One of my friends actually told her child, before there was Google, there was Rohit uncle. So I'm tired of that that honor, I am willing to relinquish it. But yeah, this whole Trishanku story is very interesting. So I said we need to talk about it because it represents a certain shift, a certain change in consciousness that is very interesting, very important. So this is Trishanku. This is Trishanku in our Sacred India Tarot. He's the what is called the hanged man or the hanging man. Those of you who've done it with me know. So multiple things. I won't get into the tarot part immediately. I'll speak about the story. So Trishanku was an Ikshvaku. He was an ancestor of Sri Rama. He was ruling from Ayodhya, and he was known as Satyavrata. And one day he suddenly had an interesting idea. I would like to go to heaven in my physical body. So the Rajpurohit or the Rajguru of the Ikshvakus of the Ayodhya royal family is always Vashishta because he is immortal. So he goes to Vashishta with this idea that, please make arrangements so that I can go to heaven in my physical body. And he gets very irritated and he says, nonsense, what kind of an idea is this? People have to die, then only they can. Your physical body doesn't go, but he won't let go of that idea. And he's like, okay, he's already the Rajguru, so he's not going to get any further benefits from me. So let me go to his children. They might be ambitious. So he goes to Vashishta's children and tells them, this is what I want to accomplish. Please help me. And they said, what is this? Have you talked to our father? And he said, yes. And he said, no. So which is why I've come to you. And they also get in fact furious, and they curse him to be a Chandala. They curse him to become deformed and this thing and become a Chandala, and that is when he gets a new name, Trishanku. Because how dare you? You're not only having such weird ideas, you're also doing Gurudroha. So you be cursed. So he's wandering in this condition because now that he's a Chandala, he can't be a king anymore. So he's lost his throne also, and he meets Vishwamitra. In those days, Vishwamitra had just begun his tapasya. He was only a Rajrishi at those days. Now, when Vishwamitra hears that Vashishta opposed, immediately he gets, because his whole aim in life in those days was, I must show down Vashishta. I must prove I am the greater Rishi than him. And he also liked this fellow. He also liked Trishanku. So sympathy for a fellow Kshatriya. So he said, of course, I'll help you, because I think he was also not just the chance to show Vasishtha down. I think he also had this idea that why did nobody think of this before? Why don't I go to heaven in my physical body? So, and then there is a chance to show Vasishtha down, okay, so in all ways, this is in my benefit only. So he organizes the normal procedure they do is like they start working with the sacred fire, and he organizes the yagna, and then he does the purna ahuti, the final ahuti, and he's waiting for the devtas to come and collect. So when they come and ask, what do you want as blessing, then he will say, take him to heaven in his physical body, and they don't come. Then Vishwamitra was known as Rishi Vyagra, the tiger amongst rishis. He didn't get that name for nothing. Hot temper was always very major part of his mindset. He's like, you won't accept the normal procedure. Now I will show you on my own energy and my own Shakti, I will send him to heaven. And he started levitating that guy up. And when he reaches the door of heaven, Indra comes there and says, you cannot come in your physical body, that is against the rules, and secondly, you've been cursed by your guru and your guru's sons, and we cannot allow that kind of person, so down you go. And Trishanku is now falling head downwards. Now Vishwamitra is really in a mad condition. So he uses his Shakti and he stops that fall. Now the Devta Shakti is pushing him down and the Rishi Shakti is pushing him up, so there is a stalemate, and upside down. And upside down. So neither in, and so he's hanging basically in space. And Vishwamitra is getting irritated because I am trying to levitate him and it is being blocked. He starts creating a new heaven. He starts new galaxies, like he starts creating new galaxies, new stars, new heaven. They won't allow him into heaven. I'll make a new heaven and I'll replace Indra and I will put Trishanku as the new Indra in the Chandala body. That was so now, see, thing is, he is not even a normal rishi, he is just a Raj rishi. He is not even a Raj rishi, he is not even a Maharishi, nothing. Brahma rishi to dur ki baat hai. At that level, his Shakti was so great that he started messing up the cosmos. So Brahma has to intervene because now this guy will make me redundant. Like, what are you doing? You can't mess up the universe like this. And more importantly, all of you are missing the most important point, which of course they were. It is like, does Trishanku have the good karma to go to heaven? You're talking about the physical body and Indra is refusing to accept what I have done with the. But you're missing the core point that he just doesn't, he has not earned that much merit, he has not earned that much punya. So, valid point. Now, what to do? But Vishwamitra always stubborn and proud fellow, so the new galaxies and everything I have created, they must remain. Okay. Yeah. This cycle of creation, okay, he does not have the punya. Next cycle of creation, he will be Indra, okay. Yeah. Okay. Now what to do? Now his Shakti is exhausted. The Devtas are also Trishanku, stay there. You do tapasya there only. You hang upside down over there. You hang upside down over there. And all that negative karma that you accumulated, plus the karma that you need to enter heaven in your physical body and to become Indra, you do all that tapasya there only. You do all that So it's a hugely funny story because at the end of all that, Vishwamitra loses all his power. Trishanku doesn't get what he wants, and the world is terrified because this new rishi, no idea what madness he will come up with, and he can't be reasoned with, he can't be argued with, because he didn't back down on anything, only he delayed. He delayed the. So a new power had certainly arisen in the universe, and everybody was shaky. Because the rishis are the real people who control the universe. So they realize here is one guy who's going to become the guy who controls the universe more than the devtas. So in tarot terms, the hanging man is usually a person who is baffled. He's a person who is hanging from a tree because that used to be a punishment that medieval Europe they used to give to the people. They would hang you from your heels because when you do that, all the blood rushes to your head and it causes very tremendous pain. So that is what it means to be baffled, not to be puzzled. Yeah, to be baffled meant to be hung up by your heels. So in tarot terms, that is always a time of great turmoil, great change. Many tarot readers say that that's it. If the card comes, that is the end of the reading. We don't need to look any further because everything is going to transform. So it is a very deep level catalyst. Unfortunately, it usually comes with physical suffering and guaranteed loss of money. So in many cards, you see that money is falling out of the purse that the person has. But it's like a pivot of transformation. A person does a lot of sadhana, comes to a certain point, and then the breakthrough happens or it doesn't happen. It's like that point where your life will now change, and it will change at a very fundamental and vital. And so what happened to Trishanku? That he was a king and then suddenly he becomes an outcast. He becomes a chandala and nobody is there to be with him. He loses all his resources. So very often those things happen in tapasya. Those things happen in, because it depends on what do you want. I just did that talk last time, that you cannot do a me plus version of, you cannot just say that I want my life to change for the better, but nothing should be different. That can't be. So this is actually that same message, that when you are transforming at that level, lots of stuff will happen which from the external world. But on the other hand, when you look at it, see what happened. Because of this one person, entire new galaxies were formed, entire new potential were formed, and the world came to know that if a person does enough sadhana, enough tapasya, he can become a rishi, he can become such a powerful rishi. So certain new things were also launched into the consciousness. But what was interesting to me was, I was thinking about what does the story mean? Because it's a very funny story, it's a very interesting story. Vishwamitra is a guy who doesn't let anybody push him around. But what does that mean? Because these are all teaching tales. In yoga, all these stories are said so that you can think about it and there is something deeper. So that's what I want to talk about. Because what does it mean when a person says, I want to go to Swarga in my physical body? Who live in Swarga? Who live in heaven? The Devas live in heaven. What does Deva mean? Deva literally means shining, the person who is glowing with inner illumination. Shining one, it means people with light bodies. So when you say, I want to go to heaven in my physical body, you are actually saying, I want to transform my body into body of light. And I'm like, 8 spiritual breaths. That's what the 8 spiritual breaths is saying. And the 8 spiritual breaths, it is my conviction that the 8 spiritual breaths are the skillful means. They are the actual practical methodology for the integral yoga. Because Sri Aurobindo was very clear about it, that it is not, the idea is not to drop our body and escape to higher dimensions of consciousness. The idea is to bring those higher dimensions of consciousness, which is Swarga, into the physical, into our current level of, to divinize the body and to divinize the. So he was very clear about that. I'm like, This is extraordinary because, I see my whole body, this wide universe, to be full of light, light, light. Every cell in my physical body is now charged with that light. That whole notion of at the cellular level, we transform the body and we make the body a light body, a body of light, a body of energy. But if you have a body of light, a body of energy, you are a devta. Because that is what deva literally means, the person who is shining, the person who is glowing, the person whose body is a body made of light. So what Aurobindo was saying is, we are to become devas. We are to bring that vibration down. Instead of dropping the body and dropping the human life and dropping the whole, the so-called problems of living in existence, you are to transform. You are to evolve existence as it is from this rigidity and narrowness and limitation, and and he also very clearly says that you need to make the body into light, you need to transform at a cellular level, you need to make the... So then this whole story becomes something else altogether. Then the nuances and resonances in the story become something else, because then Trishanku becomes the first man who had the integral yoga consciousness, and he is like, let us bring down heaven into our body, let us bring down heaven here, let us transform ourselves, let us become devas, which is why I keep saying that the Guru can never be Ishvara, but he can certainly be Deva, because he can start glowing. He cannot be the creator of the universe, but you can certainly become a person infused with light. Now Aurobindo did it, and if you look at the body of him lying in Samadhi, there is no doubt about it, good Lord. And the mother also, and it happens. But the thing is, what Aurobindo gave as the Adesh, that we need to transform, we need to bring that higher vibration down, we need to bring the entire, we need to divinize the body, we need to divinize, and that is what we are doing. So he looked at in that context, the whole story makes tremendous sense. Because you see, one of the things about the devas is that while they are very evolved and they are superior to you, they are still limited. They do not want you to go past them. That is the first problem with the deva. The deva never wants you to go past them, which is why Aurobindo actually said, beyond a point bhakti is not needed, because your bhakti will then become your limitation. Now the most famous example that we have in the culture is that Sri Ramakrishna Paramahansa, he could never break through to that final stage of attainment, because his love for Kali was so deep. Every time he would go into that final state of consciousness, Kali would appear in front of him and he would be lost in that wave of bhakti. So she had become now the barrier, and his guru was one Naga Sannyasi from Punjab called Totapuri, who was like, all these are delusions on your part, all these are just your soft brain, you're imagining with all your foolish sentiment, you're imagining these things. Like, you have created, in that sense he is right, even the devtas are created, that I have consistently said. We are the only culture in the world which actually creates a devta. We know how to create the rupa. What he is like, you have created the rupa, so you only get past it. And Ramakrishna was like, how do I do that? He said, when she appears in front of you, you create a sword and you cut her down. Like, what? She is the mother of the universe. She is my, she is Kali. I can't. Like, what do you mean you can't? Of course you will. And he took this piece of glass and he shoved it into his ajna. He actually made a puncture over there, and he said, now focus on that, and when she appears, you use your viveka, you use your mind, and you cut her down, because you have to attain. Now see, the deeper problem, this is something that people don't, because if you look at history, you look at Egypt, you look at the ancient cultures of the world, all countries had devtas, yes? You find the murtis, you find the remains, the images. There was Zeus, there was Thor, now they are coming back in the superhero movies, but basically the worship has stopped. One thing that we understand very clearly in yoga, one thing that only India seems to understand is that jitna puja karoge, as much puja as you do, as much worship as you do, that much stronger the devta becomes. If the worship of the devta stops, then that energy also starts shrinking. Now, Indra was the top god in India for thousands of years. During the Vedic times, Upanishadic times, Mahabharata, Ramayana, it's very clear that Indra is the central god. What happened was that he became the central god even for the Buddhists and the Jains. So, to distinguish from the Buddhists and the Jains, Hindus started creating new gods. Or they started picking up obscure gods. They started picking up Rudra and Vishnu, who are both in the Rig Veda. They were aspects, and so Indra became sidelined. And as the worship dwindled, where is he? Is there even one Indra temple today? And in the Rig Veda, he is the most important god, and Indra supreme above all, that is the chant. Indra supreme above all. Where is he supreme above all? Today he is a joker, he's comic relief in our stories. So when worship stops, the gods of Egypt, they were rupas, they were vital beings, they were energy beings that existed, but when the worship stopped, the ability to grant wishes, the ability to punish, all those. So what Indra is doing when Trishanku gets there is, he doesn't want this fellow to become first the equal of a god, because he will also now have the light body, and then he might go beyond me. So he is saying, no, you stay as a bhakta, you stay as a devotee, you worship me. You don't come here in your physical body, you transform your body and become a devta yourself. So it was very clearly vested interest, protecting his and what Vishwamitra was doing was, because this question was asked, he had never thought about it, but because that person asked the question and he is this superlative spiritual genius, he is probably the greatest superlative spiritual genius the world has ever seen. He is the man who gave the Gayatri to the universe after all, so that nobody is going to ever surpass. What he realized is, hello, yes, here is a very interesting possibility for evolution. We don't need the gods. Not only we don't need the gods, we can make our own Swarga, yes? We can make our own heaven, we can make our own galaxy. So that is why he was like, okay, here is the guy, he thought about it, so let me help him, But he didn't have the Shakti, he didn't have the internal development. He didn't have the internal ability to move that far. But Vishwamitra picked it up. Instantly he picked it up. Now this is very clear. This is very clear that in the end, the rupa of the devata becomes an obstacle. The final realization, the rupa becomes an obstacle. Because that is why in our rivers you will constantly find beautiful, beautiful murtis, because some yogi has come to the extent or the limit of what he can do with the murti, and then he says, okay, now I do not need this support anymore. Now I realize its limitation. I am going to become a devta myself. And it is not the same as Ishvara. It is not the same as creator of the world. Don't make that mistake. Because English is a limited language and this one word God is used for everything. There are many differences between Bhagwan, Devta, Ishvara, all those things. I can become a Deva myself. I can become a light body. I can bring down the light into me and I can transform myself. I can evolve myself consciously, which is what Aurobindo was doing, and I think Vishwamitra was the first. And it's very interesting that the Gayatri Mantra is about light. It is about the sun. It is about the source of light, So it's very, 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 very interesting that far back, this basic idea was there, that we can transform and we can make the body a body of light. So now looking at Trishanku was somehow, for some odd reason, suddenly in his mind this, and that is why the Vashishta and all, because they are defenders of the tradition, they are defenders of the established religion, no? That this joker, the minute he said it, they understood the implications. They understood the implications that he wants to take human beings beyond their human limitations and take them beyond the limitations of being a devta also. This is dangerous. So that it's very fascinating to me that how come nobody ever realized that about the Trishanku story, you know. The Trishanku Swarga, people say that we are stuck. That has been the human problem. The human problem is that a few people realize and they understand, and you know, you hear many stories that at the moment when they are going to take the final samadhi, they go into a room and they dematerialize themselves. You open the room and then you can no longer see. The person has completely evaporated, or they have merged into the murti. Now, if a person has that much control over the tattvas, you can actually do it. You can actually break yourself into your component tattvas of earth, water, fire, air. So, kabhi there's some water left over, kabhi there's some scotch marks left over, things like that. But it can actually be done. You can dematerialize yourself at a complete level, which is not the same thing as ascending and the rapture and all that nonsense, you know, but it's something that is well known in yoga. But what Aurobindo was saying was, and what Vishwamitra also was saying was, at least in my understanding of the situation, is that here is a new evolutionary possibility. We can get beyond even the limitation of the Deva. Now, please understand, the Rupa of the Devata has its own limitations. He has his own Swarupa and Swarupa. I will explain that. There is certain nature we have to accept. The nature is a wild nature. The nature is a kind nature. So, you know, if you're asking for strength, you don't go and worship Saraswati, because, you know, normally the Saraswati thing, though, sometimes that's not true, you know, because Napoleon was under the power of Saraswati, which is why much more than a warrior, they say that his administrative reforms, what he calls the Napoleonic Code, which is basically the legal system of France even today. So that is his greatest and most enduring legacy. So sometimes Saraswati can also give you the Shakti, but normally Saraswati is not the Shakti for strength or military power or something. But Napoleon was a Pratinidhi, he was a representative of the change in human consciousness, because he had to defend and protect the revolution where people would not be oppressed by feudal, they would not be oppressed by, so you know, that is why it was a Saraswati power that was flowing through him. So again, all this is Sri Aurobindo's this thing, not mine. But when you look at it, yes, Napoleon's greatest achievement was the Napoleonic Code. Not all the, you know, he gets all the credit for being a great warrior. But the truth of the matter is he was actually a phenomenal administrator, and he was, it was abnormal, it was miraculous the amount he could work. He could simultaneously dictate 5 letters at a time and things like that. You know, he had like teams of secretaries, because one group would drop of exhaustion in the next lot. So his intellectual energy was certainly much greater than any other energy that he had. But that is not the point. The point I am making is, we have Aurobindo, we have John Dingle, we have the whole integral yoga, and again we are coming to this. It sounds really odd. Make the body light, make every cell in the body light. This whole body, this wide universe, full of light. And then I go back and I find Vishwamitra is doing the same thing. So the yagna that he does, which is not answered, yes, he does those are the traditional methods, those are the traditional sadhanas, those are the traditional pujas, those are all the established things that you do, and you find it runs up against the limitation. How does he start moving Trishanku up? Personal Shakti. So we have to develop our personal Shakti. So the story is much deeper. It's much deeper and much more meaningful than just a simple story of, see, Vishwamitra had such a bad temper. And one more way to laugh at Indra. Indra, poor fellow, is defending his hard-won. So, and the story about Sri Ramakrishna, people don't understand that. Which is not to say that after you break through, you don't remain a bhakta. Again, this is a misunderstanding that people have. Now, certain yogis become very hard when they break through and they are like, see, all gods are anyways created. They are created with the mind, with the form, with the Ichha Shakti. So, why have a god? But most people remain bhaktas. It is not like Vivekananda was not a bhakta, Adi Shankara was not a bhakta. In fact, Adi Shankara became a bhakta after he wrote all his great Vedantic. Then he started his entire wave of bhakti. So it's not like because you know that you don't remain a bhakta, because to stay in that kind of atmosphere you become very hard. But the truth of the matter is, when I think about what Aurobindo and the mother said and what they were trying to do and trying to accomplish, and which is why the mother very often used to say that if you continue to worship the form, then that will be the extent you can go. And dropping the old, because Vishwamitra realized that by doing the yagna, this won't work. He did the yagna, he did everything perfectly and no answer. So those forms, those old methods also had their limitation. They had the inherent parameters and you cannot go beyond that. You have to find out something new, which is exactly what Aurobindo did and which is exactly what John Dingle did. The whole thing is not drop the body, not run from this world and escape to the higher consciousness. Oh, thank God, I am free of that horrible prison of the world and the body. The whole thing is to bring that higher vibration completely into life. To force the energy to descend, like the way Vishwamitra. My new galaxies, they will remain. I just love him, because he's like, what do you mean you won't give it? I will make it happen, Zidd. He is just an extreme example of will, What do you mean it's not in my destiny? What do you mean I can't do it? I will make it happen. You will have no choice but to make it happen. So this is extraordinary. This whole possibility of integral yoga, the whole central purpose of integral yoga, which people forget sometimes. People forget and they get so trapped in the thinking, the whole sort of integral consciousness and the whole sort of integral approach. They have got into head games and they keep forgetting that in integral yoga, Aurobindo and the mother were all constantly hammering, transform the physical, transform the physical, transform the physical. And the only methodology I have seen for that, the only methodology which says, okay, let's do it, let's jump right into it, is the 8 spiritual breaths. The 8 spiritual breaths, it's very clear, yes, almost every second affirmation, bring the light down, make the body a light body, make the body, and a light body means your Deva. That is what Deva means. That form, that Rupa which is made of light is a Deva. So we are to become Devas. Or Devis, as the case may be. So this was a stunning sort of breakthrough for me, and I am very happy because I believe that almost everything that is creative and original in yoga in the end flows from Vishwamitra, because he was the guy who said all this nonsense which will not allow me to do sadhana because I am Kshatriya. He was the one person who was constantly saying, out. It does not exist. I will create it. And there is no way to do it, right? I'll do it with my internal energy. So he had that full, the will to change, the will to bring about change, the will to evolve. Vishwamitra is that power, he is that deep-seated power in the world. And he is Brahma Rishi, so very obviously. Now, of course, this will upset some people because we are saying you need to leave the gods behind, and I'm like, yes. Even Ramakrishna Paramahansa, about whom Sri Aurobindo said, for 500 years the world cannot take such a descent of divine Shakti. He was that great. Even he had to learn that. That in the end, no matter how vast and how titanic and how gigantic the form, the Rupa of the Devata, that is nevertheless boundary. And the whole point of yoga is to be free, it is to be limitless. So this kind of, I'm like, here we go. This was an early attempt at the 8 spiritual breaths. Vishwamitra is such a hot-tempered guy, but he did it with his internal Shakti, and that is why, that is why I don't encourage, you must have noticed, I don't encourage people to start wearing this around the neck and do this and do that and everything. I keep saying, do the breaths, do the breaths. At a very fundamental level, the greater your Shakti, the easier to manifest. The greater your internal vibration, the easier the Ichha Shakti becomes. Because if you are worshipping and asking the Devta will take the cut. That also I have explained. Yes, that the Devta takes energy and then releases back. So the Devta takes the cut. That is their Shakti. They are also living beings. Why will they do something which will bring their energy down? So it's not a selfish thing, it's a normal thing. Normally you get more benefits than anything from the Devta. But if you are in yoga, it's a different matter. In the end, even the Devta becomes a crutch. In the end, even the Devta becomes a limitation. So to me, this story was something, the Trishanku Swarga, the Trishanku story was something extraordinary, and the way it tied into, Sri Aurobindo and the integral yoga, and also our John Dingle and our 8 spiritual breaths. I'm like, wow, so this whole thought of just putting up that comment and then people asking me what it was obviously something very significant, very interesting, much better than the talk I originally planned. Okay? Sarvam Shiva.